If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 9 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that on January 8th, 2025, Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on January 10th, 2025. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on January 13th, 2025. Martial law will be declared in the U.S. It is predicted that Joe Biden will replace Kamala Harris with Michelle Obama as the vice president. Joe Biden will then step down. Per the 20th Amendment, Congress will vote to make Michelle Obama the temporary president. It is predicted that Joe Biden will then step down and Michelle Obama will become the 47th president, and then she will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. It is then predicted that she will step down on January 12th and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. It is predicted that on April 20th, 2025, there will be an outbreak of monkeypox or Marburg disease or both. April 20th will be a symbolic beginning to a new pandemic. Alternatively, it could also be that the symbolic beginning to the new pandemic will be on April 1st, 2025, and that on April 20th, 2025, martial law will be declared because of the new outbreak. If these predictions for April 1st and April 20th, 2025 do not come to pass, there will be a relevant prophetic sign that will occur on this date, making this date a step in the trail of signs leading to these particular events. It is predicted that on June 9th, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. If June 9th is not the date for these events, there will be a relevant prophetic sign or prophetic signs, which will make June 9th a step in the trail of signs leading to the date of the symbolic beginning of these things. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls. symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025. Which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2026. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on, in case you can't find me later. if you have already watched this introductory information in another video, you can skip ahead no more than 14 minutes. All right, this video was originally produced prior to January 1st and 2nd, and God was pointing to this date in regards to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. This January 1st to 2nd, 2025 date, which is Hanukkah Day 8 in the Hebrew calendar. Now, the way God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel, is that it is an interconnected web, and the full intended meaning of any of God's prophetic signs cannot be fully or properly understood without their context and connections to the other prophetic signs. It's the exact same way with the Bible. The Bible isn't a linear document, and all of it is connected to itself. You can take an infinite number of pathways through the Bible because it is all interconnected. That's the way it is with God's prophetic signs. And so to do this, like a spider web, we need these nodes in which the strings connect to each other, if you will. These are these steps in the trail of signs. So in other words, God is establishing a trail of signs. And one of these steps, nodes in the web, is January 1st and 2nd. In regards to the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, it is a step. And we expected either for Kamala Harris to die on this date, or there be it was recognized before January 1st that it would only be a step, but not before the production of this video. But that's fine, because the reason why God is making these predictions in the first place, and this is key, please pay attention. This is the important thing to understand here. The reason for the prediction is not for us to say, oh, cool, God predicted this ahead of time. The purpose of this prediction is for God to tell his stories that he is telling through his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. And this requires, like I just explained, these trails of signs and interconnected signs that point to a particular date ahead of time, for example. And it is through God's stories that he is telling through these trails of signs that he's able to communicate extremely important information and knowledge, which is only being explained on this channel. Okay, and so this video, after I'm done this introduction here, will be about how God pointed to January 1st and 2nd ahead of time. That needs to be learned so that you can learn the stories that God was telling, and they are amazing. They are not only amazing, the information is important and extremely essential. So the wise person will recognize when the prediction comes to pass that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on January 8th, that they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all of the Kamala Harris crash prediction videos, including the information for how God pointed to January 1st and 2nd ahead of time. By the way, it's January 1st and 2nd because it's Hanukkah Day 8, and in the Hebrew calendar, the dates begin at sunset and go to sunset. Okay. So regarding what happened on January 1st that confirmed all of the analysis, today as I'm speaking, it is the early AM January 2nd, so there may be more to this, because again, he was pointing to both dates. But regarding what happened on January 2nd, we have amazing signs that I'll briefly explain, but more details regarding these signs are explained in the New Year's Eve or New Year's attacks video. Okay, the thumbnail that says New Year's attacks. Okay. Now, Kamala Harris's plane crash is predicted to be caused due to lightning. There's profound symbolism in this. The reason why is that Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. He said this in Luke 10:18. Okay, and the name Barack Obama means in Hebrew, lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning. Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven. And, for example, Lucifer is said to have fallen from the high place. And also, in the Bible, the high place is a euphemism for the false religious worship that the Jews would conduct on the tops of mountains, which is Antichrist symbolism. And in the language Jesus would have spoken, Aramaic, the word for from is O. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. This is why we received all of this lightning symbolism on January 1st. First of all, there were 4 profound prophetic, and even the mainstream media is talking about it. Those that don't know anything about God or let alone prophetic signs are talking about this. This coincidence of these 4 iconic locations in New York and Washington, D.C. having been hit by lightning on this New Year's Eve night. The mainstream media is, of course, mocking conservatives who are saying that it's a sign from God that's pointing to the new chapter of America when Trump takes power. But Trump isn't going to take power. The reason why Kamala Harris will fall in a plane crash caused by lightning, which will symbolize when Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, is that due to her plane crash and her fall from the sky, the Antichrist will rise to become the president again. Barack Obama. Okay, so that's the purpose of the plane crash. This plane crash of Harris's has been known through God's prophetic signs since 2020. Okay, and there's been hundreds of signs regarding this theme since then. Now, in fact, the signs go back well before Harris was even a household name. But that's another story. So we have these 4 lightning strikes, which, by the way, is in itself interesting because we are talking about the 44th president. But there were 2 lightning strikes on the 2 iconic towers in New York City and 2 lightning strikes on the iconic locations in Washington, D.C., the Capitol building and the Washington Monument. These 2 lightning strikes on the 2 iconic towers in New York obviously hint at the 2 planes that struck the Twin Towers on 9/11. Likewise, the 2 strikes in Washington, D.C. hinted at the 2 planes that were destined for Washington on 9/11 to be crashed into sites, including the Capitol building, we think, on 9/11. Okay, and so also, speaking of New York, one of the signs was the New York City story of the day was the heavy rain during the ball drop for the New Year's countdown. Kamala Harris is predicted to drop out of the sky. And I assume there will be heavy rain because she's predicted to have her crash caused by lightning. But also, heavy rain is Noah's flood symbolism. In the account of the flood, God gave Noah a 7 days warning. And so from these warning signs on January 1st, it is 7 days to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. January 8th was known before, and independently, like I said, it was known before January 1st. And so this is confirmation, this Noah's flood symbolism sign. We are just scratching the surface here, though, of the lightning symbolism on January 1st. Because we also have these 2 New Year's Eve attacks which contain lightning symbolism. First, we have the explosion of the Tesla Cybertruck in front of the Trump International Hotel. Now, without getting into the details regarding Trump, because that's not what this video is about, but Trump is predicted to die on January 10th. But the Tesla Cybertruck is lightning symbolism because God is using in his signs Tesla to symbolize lightning. Not only is it symbolism for electricity, which is symbolism for lightning, but Nikola Tesla is famous for his experiments with lightning. Then we had also, in conjunction with this terrorist attack in Las Vegas at the Trump Hotel, we have what is believed at this point probably to be coordinated with the attack in Las Vegas, this attack also using a vehicle in New Orleans. Now, the attack in New Orleans is highly interesting because it involves this Muslim terrorist that was serving in the U.S. Army for 10 years, and it was in the 18th state to join the Union. Now, 18 is 6 plus 6 plus 6, which is the number of the Antichrist, 666. Also, the Antichrist was born in 1961, and 61 is the 18th prime number. But this 10 years service for the U.S. Army and him doing this attack in the 18th state hinted at Luke 10:18, which is when Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. Wow. Not only that, the initial reports in the first chaotic minutes after the attack, the media was speaking about, or the headlines were, at least 10 deaths. And so at least 10 deaths in the 18th state is also a hint at Luke 10:18, which of course again is lightning symbolism. What's also interesting too is that the attack occurred at 3:15 a.m. Let's call it 3 a.m. Because Paul Simon released with Art Garfunkel his first album, and it was titled Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. That album was released the day before Kamala Harris was born. Okay, Kamala Harris's birth followed the release of Wednesday Morning 3 a.m., and Kamala Harris's death will follow this attack on Wednesday morning 3 a.m. Now, like I explained, the rest of this video will explain how God pointed to January 1st ahead of time. And like I explained, this information must be learned, and therefore this video must be watched. Now, before I begin this information, I'll also add that now that it has been explained how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, there are 70 videos that explain the trails of signs that led to February 10th, 2024. The same is true for these videos. The information in the videos, the prediction that she would die in a plane crash on February 10th, and all of the information that God demonstrated that led to February 10th is 100% correct. And these videos explain, like I'm saying, these stories through which God is telling extremely important information and knowledge. In other words, you need to seek out the February 10th videos and watch these videos also. This also applies also to May 19th, 2024, and also December 24th, 2024. But I think there are only a few videos for those two dates. Make sure you watch the videos for them, but also February 10th. One thing to add to that is that the February 10th videos are the trails of signs that go back years. So I just couldn't continue to update these 70 videos for every step in the trail. I decided that something new needed to be done, and that was to, in future videos, direct you to the videos that point to February 10th. The trails that led to February 10th are the trails that go back years. And so you will find not only the information amazing, but also it's extremely important, the knowledge and information that God is communicating through the stories he is telling, like I explained. All right, what I want to talk about are these recent plane incident signs, these plane crashes. For example, the plane that crashed in Azerbaijan that was on its way to Russia, that was shot down accidentally by the Russians who thought it was a drone. Okay, and that was followed a few days later by the plane crash, just a couple of days later, by the plane crash in South Korea. All right, and then on the same day, were these other two plane incidents in Canada and Norway. Okay, now there's a reason for all of this. It's so amazing. I don't have a script. I don't have any plan. Actually, I'm just going to ad lib here. I'm going to just improvise and try to do my best to explain what is going on in my mind regarding all of this. Okay, but it's mind-boggling. And the truth about this prophetic sign will only be explained on this channel, like countless other prophetic signs are only explained on this channel. Now, God has been communicating for years that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash. And as a result, Barack Obama will become the president again. So that's the root reason, if you will. Actually, if you go, you can go even deeper with the symbolism and theology here. Her crash in itself will be symbolism for the phrase that the Apostle Paul used regarding Satan, the prince of the power of the air. Okay, so that's why we have these air signs. The mark of the Antichrist will be triggered by frequencies in the air, for example. Those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist will become demonically possessed through frequencies in the air. Prince of the power of the air. Furthermore, Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash predicted to be next to the Gateway Arch, which is symbolic of a portal through which demons pretending to be aliens and will also demonically possess people will pass through into the earthly realm. Okay? Also, Kamala Harris will be flying from LAX. X in God's signs is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And Los Angeles is Spanish for angels, so her fall will be symbolism for fallen angels. All right? So, now, what is with this particular sign, though, with the Azerbaijan plane crash, followed by the plane crash in South Korea? This is an amazing thing. It's amazing for me because I've been wondering for years now, what is the significance of Korean Air Flight 007? Okay? This was the plane that was shot down accidentally by the Russians in, I think it was 1981. Like I say, I don't have any time to like make a, super perfect video here, okay? I'm just improvising with the knowledge in my head. I got other things to do because we've only got a couple of days until Kamala Harris's plane crash. Okay, so it was in the early 80s, maybe it was even like 1983. I know it was during the Reagan presidency. It was during the Cold War, and it was a major incident in the Cold War. It almost led to, disaster with nuclear war. It was one of the heightened events, that put people on edge. Well, anyway, the Korean Air flew off course, and it flew a little bit into Russian airspace, which is when they shot it down. We'll leave aside the conspiracy theories regarding this because there are a lot. What happened is the bottom line is that the plane was shot down, okay? And bottom line, it was an accident. Well, no, then again, there are conspiracy theories that say it wasn't an accident, okay? So, but this video isn't for the purpose of deciding, which one is the true explanation. What we are going to focus on, though, is the fact that it was shot down by the Russians. And if anything, in the mainstream media, at least the story, or at least the story from the Russians, is that it was an accident. Okay? That's good enough for this explanation because it parallels the accidental shooting down of the airplane the other day. Okay? Which was followed by the plane crash in South Korea. Making these two recent plane crashes clearly communication from God that is pointing to the Korean Air crash that was accidentally shot down by the Russians as it was entering Russian airspace, just like the plane that crashed in Azerbaijan was shot down as it was entering Russian airspace. You see what I'm saying here? Okay. Now, the thing is, the death toll in the recent plane crash in South Korea is 169. deaths. The death toll in the Korean Air 007 is 269 deaths. Did I say 169? I meant 179. The recent one is 179, and the Korean Air in the 80s was 269, a difference of 90. The difference of 90 hints at 45. It hints at 40 plus 50, which hints at 45. That's because it's hinting at the 45th president. Because actually, it's also predicted that President Trump will die on the same day as Kamala Harris's plane crash, as crazy as that sounds. So that's the reason for the 90 deaths difference, okay? So we've got these two themes overlapping here. The death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash and the death of Trump. What also confirms that this is also part of the trail of signs leading to the death of Trump is that the flight number of the plane that crashed in the 80s is 007. That is a hint at Trump because of the association of the number 7 and Joshua, who Trump is a type for. Okay, Joshua led the Israelites around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho once per day for 7 days. And then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. And then the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. And Joshua, who led them, died at the age of 110. On 9/11, after the 110 stories collapsed in God's judgment, Trumpet called into channel to the local TV news station and inadvertently trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. Trump's election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, which collapsed in God's judgment after he left office. Okay, so that's the reason why Flight 007. But it's also a hint at Kamala Harris because the flight departed from the 49th state, which is 7 times 7. And by the way, when the Israelites enacted the 7, it was more accurately a 7 and a 7 times 7. They marched around once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. A 7 and a 7 times 7. Well, the plane departed from the 49th state, 7 times 7, and the flight number was 007. But Kamala Harris is the 49th vice president, 7 times 7, which is why the plane departed from Alaska. But before it departed from Alaska, it departed from JFK Airport, John F. Kennedy, and Kennedy was the Camelot president, as in Kamala. Kennedy died while in office, as will Kamala. He died while in his vehicle, as will Kamala Harris, right? So there's these parallels with that too. Now, okay, so I've explained a bit now. What I was saying at the beginnings, though, is that this isn't enough. This isn't enough. This isn't enough of an explanation as to why is Flight 007 so important. What is the prophetic meaning? What is God communicating? Because they're, in my opinion, knowing God's signs more than, well, there needs to be deeper meaning to the signs. There's a deeper thing that God is communicating. Like I was saying before, it is through the interconnected signs that God is able to tell these stories and provide through the stories extremely important information and knowledge. So what is the lesson here? What is the deeper meaning, in other words? What is God really pointing to? Well, there's only one thing that God could be pointing to with all of this. That flight, which is why the conspiracy theories, by the way, which is also part of the sign. The conspiracy theories are themselves part of the story. But what they do which one of the stories is true or not is not so relevant as what they end up doing, which is pointing to who was on the flight. Who was on the flight? This was a delegation on their way to Korea, if I recall, for a ceremony regarding the Korean War, if I recall. Which is about the fight against communism. Ronald Reagan, who at the time was the president, called, and I think if I could be wrong about this, but it's possible that he made the statement in response, in reaction to the shooting down of the flight. But he called the Soviet Empire the evil empire, which really, really got the leftismists, the people on the left, really bothered, because the left does not hate evil. The left doesn't hate evil. The Bible, though, talks about the commandment to hate evil of those who love God, which is why those who claim to be religious, whether it be Christian or Jewish or Muslim, who don't hate evil and are on the left, are not with God. And that's the epitome of Jimmy Carter. That's who Jimmy Carter is. Jimmy Carter is a prophetic sign, and one of the biggest reasons why God is using or has used Jimmy Carter is for this very purpose, for this very symbolism. Jimmy Carter represents leftism, which is a religion, with a cross. It's leftism with a cross. It's a false religion with a cross. Just like most of Reformed Judaism is the Torah with a cross, with leftism with the Torah. It's not really the Torah. It's not really the cross. It's fake. It's false religion. It's deception. Jimmy Carter epitomizes this. I do not know where Jimmy Carter is today. He died yesterday. But what I do know is that Jimmy Carter died in conjunction with these planes signs. And they were plural. That's the reason why there were 4 of them. There was the Azerbaijan flight, the South Korea crash, the flight that crashed in Canada, and a flight in Norway, all crashed on the same day, 4 of them, because Jimmy Carter died in the 4th state to join the Union in Plains, Georgia. Yes. Jimmy Carter, like no other president, is known for being from a particular place. He spent his entire life, besides the time he was in the governor's mansion and the White House, in Plains, Georgia. There's much more to this even regarding Jimmy Carter and why Plains, Georgia. One thing it has to do with is the Plains of Gaza. Jimmy Carter brokered the Camp David Accords, which pressured Israel to give back Plains of Gaza territory to Egypt. And in the Bible, King David, as in the Camp David Accords, subdued the tribes on the Plains of Gaza. All right? So, and that's Antichrist symbolism, because the thing that the Antichrist will do is lead a world effort to divide God's land and make Jerusalem an international city, etc. And it'll be a president. That's why Jimmy Carter is this president symbolism to do this. It's, of course, the 44th president, which is why Jimmy Carter died in the 4th state on the 4th day of Hanukkah. That's right. We're talking about the Antichrist on the Temple Mount in the end times period, which Jimmy Carter is symbolic of, which is why he died in the 4th state on the 4th day of Hanukkah. 4 days before Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Now, like I said at the beginning though, or maybe it wasn't this video. No, it wasn't this video. I said it in another video. Hanukkah Day 8 is what God is pointing to, and that begins at sunset on January 1st and goes to sunset January 2nd. So Kamala Harris could die in a plane crash on January 1st after sunset. Okay? And so that, in any case, it's 4 days after Hanukkah Day 4, which began at sunset on the 28th. Okay? And that's when, now, it could even be that let me just check. Now, the Azerbaijan flight crashed on Christmas on the 25th, 4 days before Jimmy Carter died, who is predicted to die 4 days before Kamala Harris's plane crash, as in Plains, Georgia, the 4th state. Okay, and so on December 25th, which is 4 plus 4 days before Harris's predicted crash, which will lead to the rise of the 44th president to be, I should say the 44th president becoming the president again, we had a prophetic football game in which the halftime show was performed by Beyonce, who is known for being obsessed with the number 4. For example, she named her daughter Ivy after the Roman numeral 1-4, right? IV. Okay, also, one of her albums is named 4. Instead of a wedding ring, her and her husband have tattooed on their wedding ring finger Ivy, the number 4, the Roman numeral for 4. And on and on. Okay, so she's known for this obsession with the number 4. And her halftime show was for her new album, which she was nominated for a Grammy Award on the same day that Jimmy Carter was nominated for a Grammy Award for his spoken album. Her new album being Cowboy Carter. Okay, so the musician known for being obsessed with the number 4 sang her album Cowboy Carter 4 days before the death of Jimmy Carter. The total score, the final score in the game, added up to 39. Jimmy Carter is the 39th president. So, also, the game was against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It involved the Pittsburgh team, Barack Obama, the 44th president, first, and God uses firsts for signs, first joined Harris's campaign with a event in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is 40 plus 40 miles from where Flight 93 crashed on 9/11 that killed 44 people. Flight 93 hints at the 39th president. Pittsburgh hints at the bottomless pit from which the demons will emerge, the fallen angels, which is what Kamala Harris's crash will symbolize when she crashes after departing Los Angeles and then falls next to the Gateway Arch, the symbolic portal. The game was also against the Kansas City Chiefs. which God has used in his signs, and chiefs hints at the antichrists. There's two of them. They are described in Revelation chapter 13. 39 is 13 plus 13 plus 13. God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. From the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist. Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was in the 13th generation from Adam. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month. And the two Antichrists are described in Revelation chapter 13. The initials KC, Kansas City, which goes by KC, is equal to 13 in Hebrew gematria. Okay, so that's amazing. That's why from the Cowboy Carter performance by the musician, which, by the way, music is frequencies in the air, and Kamala Harris's plane crash will symbolize the phrase the Apostle Paul used for Satan, the prince of the power of the air. It'll be frequencies that will trigger the mark of the Antichrist that is inside people that will facilitate demonic possession of these people. Okay, so the musician obsessed with the number 4 performed Cowboy Carter 4 days before the death of Jimmy Carter, who is predicted to die, who died, and his death is predicted to be 4 days before Hanukkah Day 8, 4 plus 4, the date on which it is predicted that Kamala Harris will fall from the sky in a plane crash, as in Plains, Georgia. Oh, I know, I got off track. I'm glad I remembered before I ended the video, though, the bigger theme, the deeper meaning of all of this. Okay. The deeper meaning of Flight 007 to Korea. It had on board these delegates, these representatives of the U.S., including the representative of the 4th state. The congressman that represented District number 7 of the 4th state died on Flight 007, and these planes signs on January 28th and 29th reveal adding 4 days to the death of Jimmy Carter. Now I say the 28th and 29th because the plane signs occurred on these 2 dates in different time zones around the world. And that's God communicating that what he's really pointing to is the Hanukkah dates, the middle date of Hanukkah, which is symbolic of the Antichrist. I think I explained that. Maybe I didn't explain it. So Hanukkah is symbolic of the end times, and the end times period is symbolized by this period that's divided into 2, the middle being the abomination Antichrist date, if you will. All right? And so that's why this Antichrist symbolism president died on the middle date. But that's also revealed through the dates of the crashes, because depending on the time zone, etc., it was on the 28th and the 29th. In other words, Hanukkah Day 4 from sunset to sunset, which points to Hanukkah Day 8 from sunset to sunset. Okay, now, so God is pointing to Larry McDonald, who true conservatives after his death consider him to be a martyr, especially those who would subscribe to the conspiracy theories regarding the downing of the flight. Why would the conspiracies be that they would think that the flight was taken down intentionally? Larry McDonald was the biggest anti-communist voice in Congress. And he spoke truth. And he spoke reason. And he was a crusader for the truth about communism that Ronald Reagan said, for example, which is that it is evil. literally. So one thing before I forget, Larry McDonald, who represented the fourth state, and God pointed to this 4 days before Harris's and Trump's predicted deaths. It's Donald Trump, and that's what's hinted at with Larry McDonald. This isn't the only example of the name McDonald God has cleverly used to point to the death of Trump, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is one of the two witnesses. I have videos explaining this for those that know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you're wondering, what in the world am I talking about at this point? But as I explained in the other videos, it was never meant to be that everyone would recognize. It was meant to be that it would be difficult to recognize. It was meant to be that those with the Holy Spirit will know what I'm saying is true. And the others that did not recognize Trump, including quote-unquote Christians, who did not recognize who Trump was, the fighter for truth, they'll not be able to recognize. And I don't care if you call yourself a Christian. I don't care how much you're into Bible prophecy. It's irrelevant. Trump is one of the two witnesses. Case closed. When the prediction comes to pass. Because the purpose of the prediction is to prove it. And believe me, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction. Now, I explain much more regarding this in the other videos. You'll be blown away. But Trump is one of the two witnesses. And Larry McDonald, if you will, is like a witness, if you will, for speaking the truth regarding the left in America and communism. Now, today we are in the middle of a communist coup by the left, which includes the corporate left media. And, well, anyway, I'll not make this video about Trump, except to say that the witnesses are said to be murdered in the prophecy. And the conspiracy theorists claim that Larry McDonald was murdered on that flight. And if you don't think leftists would actually take down a flight in order to get their enemy, you do not know the left. And the left doesn't even know itself, actually. They don't know that they spiritually are with Satan. And it'll all come to the fore, which is what the purpose of Trump is. Trump and his personality served the purpose of driving the left crazy. It was intentional. God designed it that they would be driven crazy in order to expose them and who they really are. And many, many millions of people have woken up since the rise of Trump. There are conservatives like myself that have known for decades what's going on and how evil the left is. Leftism, progressive liberalism, whatever you want to call it. But there are many that have, even former Democrats, that have woken up since the rise of Trump. And that was God's design. God showed everyone the truth about it through them going crazy over Trump. Right? So anyway. So that's why Larry McDonald is, this is a confirmation of what I'm saying, I'm getting at regarding Larry McDonald. The fact that it connects to Donald Trump. And when the prediction comes to pass, it'll even prove what I'm saying even more. Because these plane crashes are all pointing to Larry McDonald. That's the bottom line here. It's not just, hey, cool, God had these plane crashes on the day of Carter's death in the fourth state 4 days before. No, there's lots more. And a big part of this is Larry McDonald. Because of what Larry McDonald represents. The crusade against the left. Because it is evil. And I'm not just talking about what you might call radical left. I mean, the left today is radical in general, right? There might be, a few center-left people that aren't crazy, that aren't evil, but those people have woken up. So, and they've left, for example, the Democrat Party, right? And anyway, what God is communicating here is the truth about what is going on regarding the left and what you might call 21st century communism. Because the problem is we don't have vocabulary for what is going on. It's new. And so to use vocabulary from the 1930s, like calling it communism, isn't really useful because it doesn't really describe what's going on, first of all, but it allows the other side to scoff and to mock the calling of them communists. But they are. They're descendants of Marxism, but it's not about economics. It's not like the Soviet Union, but it is. It is and it isn't, right? We don't have the vocabulary for the movement that they are in, but also it's a religious movement. It is a religion, and it is a religious war. It is a civil war between the secular left and classic American values that are, whether they believe in the Bible or not, rooted in the Bible. It's America versus those that, as Barack Obama said, hate America and want to radically transform it. 5 days before Obama took office, he said, we are just 5 days away, or 5 days before the election or something. He said, we are just 5 days away from radically transforming America. Someone who loves America, someone who loves their spouse, does not wish that they could radically transform their spouse. You don't love your spouse if you want to radically transform them. People that believe that and cheer for what Obama said, etc., they don't love America, they hate it. The left hates America. They hate the American values. They hate, actually, God. They don't, all of them know it consciously. Many of them do. But that's the bottom line. They're spiritually Antichrist. They have the spirit of Antichrist. That's the war we are in. And that's the left today. Okay? And that's what Larry McDonald represents. And that's why God pointed to Larry McDonald through all of this. Through these recent plane crashes. And the coincidence of the plane that was accidentally shot down by the Russians right before the plane crash in Korea, which pointed to the Korea Air 007 that was accidentally shot down, on which was the representative of the 7th district of the 4th state, which is why all of this is 4 days before Kamala Harris's predicted plane crash and the death of Donald Trump. One obvious thing that I forgot to add here is that the Korean crash, the crash in South Korea a couple of days ago on January 29th, which actually was yesterday, but it was, I guess, Korean time, so it seems like it was 2 days ago. Whatever. Anyway, it was a bird strike. And that is a hint at how it is predicted that Kamala Harris's plane will crash due to a bird strike. God has been communicating this bird strike as being the reason for her crash. God has been communicating a bird strike crash for years, including since, by the way, Captain Sully and his ditching of his airplane into the Hudson River due to a bird strike and its connection with Barack Obama at the State of the Union speech, and on, as explained in other videos. All right, so I just looked it up, and I should have done so beforehand. The date of the flight of Korea Air 007 was September 1st, 1983. That date is exactly 41 years and 4 months before it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And that is astounding. The reason is, it's been known for a long time that the birth date of Kamala Harris is exactly 414 months, which is what 41 years and 4 months hints at. She was born exactly 41 years and 4 months before the school shooting of school shootings that started the trend of school shootings. The Columbine shooting massacre in Columbine, Colorado, when the 2 teenagers massacred the students in the high school. Okay. Well, first of all, why don't we just corroborate the connection first? 414 months is extremely interesting because, well, for one thing, God has been pairing 4 and 14. And I'm not saying this is a pairing of 4 and 14. Let's just leave that out, actually. Make this simple. Kamala Harris announced after she became the acting vice president, she announced the itinerary of her first international trip, which was her trip to investigate the border wall of security crisis. We all know what the source of the border wall of security crisis is. It's the left. It's the leftists that opened the borders so that they could radically transform America and have a permanent majority. That's the truth. But anyway, she did the farce. She went down to investigate the border wall of security. But the deeper reason for all of the border wall of security symbolism is the book of Joshua in the Bible, when the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. Incidentally, in that story, there is a central figure who is a prostitute, a woman prostitute named Rahab. Kamala Harris is symbolic of this, all right? In God's signs. Don't get mad at me for being vulgar or politically incorrect. All right? It's widely known that she got her start in politics through sleeping with the mayor of San Francisco. But God is communicating this in the signs, and that's what is being communicated here as well. And so she, the harlot, went down to the wall of security, and Rahab in the story in Joshua helped the Israelites escape down the wall before the walls of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. Okay. Now, she first announced this itinerary on the date April 14th, 4/14. So this is a second witness to what I'm about to explain. That day was prophetic, by the way. There was another major prophetic sign on that day where the Chicago White Sox pitcher almost pitched a perfect game, but he ruined it in the 9th inning when he hit the other batter in the foot. It was player number 55 for Chicago that hit the batter for Cleveland in the foot, and that batter's number is also 55. Anyway, that's another story. The point there, though, is the Antichrist is from Chicago, and God is using Cleveland and Chicago to point to the Antichrist. I won't get into it. Cleveland, because Grover Cleveland was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, just like Barack Obama will serve non-consecutive terms. And I'll leave it at that because I've explained it many times in other videos. So that was the date 4/14, and that hinted at this 414 number, which again is the number of months exactly between her birth on October 20th, 1964, and the Columbine shooting on April 20th, 1999. All right. Now, April 20th is the 110th day of the year, incidentally, and it was in 1999. And God pairs 9 and 110 to point to the 110 stories of the towers that collapsed and engendered a small earthquake on 9/11 and cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, which was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. Anyway, that's a pairing of 9 and 110, which God does to confirm his signs and connections. And we have this in connection with Kamala Harris here, with this symbolism of her being the Rahab harlot in the story, just not being her being Rahab, don't get me wrong, she's not redeemed. But anyway, you get my point. It's all symbolism. And anyway, to finish this explanation here, the 414 months connects to the Columbine shooting for very good reason. For one, being that 414 months is exactly 12,600 days. Okay, that hints at 1,260 days, mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy as symbolism for the period of the end and the Antichrist. Okay, 12,600 days is also exactly 600 plus 600 plus 600 weeks, which also hints at the Antichrist. Okay. Now, there were 2 shooters because there are 2 Antichrists. The 2 teenagers symbolize the 2 Antichrists in Bible prophecy, as does, incidentally, the pitcher and the batter, both number 55. Now, I'm not going to explain 55. Well, St. Louis, where Kamala Harris is predicted to crash, is connected to Chicago with the I-55. All right, which incidentally is connected with the I-90 to Cleveland, and the game was ruined. The perfect game was ruined in the 9th inning, and on and on. Okay, there's lots more to that. The extremely difficult thing about explaining God's big picture of science is that it is an interconnected web, and when you try to explain one part of it, you end up pulling the entire web with it, and it's extremely challenging to explain to someone in a linear way because it isn't linear; it's 3-dimensional. All right, so the point back to this 414 months between the birth of Kamala Harris and the Columbine shooting. Okay, and that is because, well, I think we do have to explain how God pairs 4 and 14 together. To point to Zechariah 4:14, which is the verse regarding the 2 witnesses, which is paralleled in the book of Revelation, and the 2 witnesses, one of them is Trump. Okay, and that's proven with the prediction. The prediction will prove that. I'm not going to explain it anymore. Watch the 2 witnesses videos on this channel. The thing, too, though, is that Trump is predicted to die on the same day that Kamala Harris is predicted to die. That's 2 deaths, incidentally. There were 2 shooters. There are 2 antichrists. Okay. So that's another reason for the 414 months and the 41 years and 4 months between the Korea Air crash and Kamala Harris's predicted crash. But again, it's all pointing to this connection also between her birth and the shooting in Columbine. And here is the climax of this story here, which is that the truth about the shootings, the mass school shootings, is that they have been judgment. Well, let's just say this. Well, I'm on the right track. They have been judgment from God for, let's put it this way, the murder of people's children in school. So the mass school shootings coincided with the peak of baby boomers' children in high school. The mass school shootings, if you will recall, in the early 2000s, then led to these big mass shootings in university, which was when the peak of the baby boomers' kids were in university. Right? In other words, the peak of the millennial generation. For very good reason. Because it is judgment for these parents condoning the murder of other people's unborn babies. And the legalization of abortions was done for the baby boomer generation. And Kamala Harris is known today, having superseded Hillary Clinton, as being the biggest advocate, highest powered politician to be the advocate for abortions. In fact, in this campaign recently, she became the first White House official to visit inside an abortion clinic. And she did a campaign event in an abortion clinic in this recent campaign. She is the prostitute. She is the harlot. And that's the reason for the connection to Columbine shooting. But what confirms that too is that one of the shooters' names is Harris. Eric Harris. The other shooter's name was Dylan Klebold, and her initials are KD. In the shooter's names, we have KD Harris. And it connects with an astounding exact 12,600 days to her birth. And she is the abortion's advocate, and the mass school shootings have been judgment from God for these parents condoning the murder of other people's children. That's why she will die exactly 41 years and 4 months after the crash of Korean Air that departed from the 49th state. She is the 49th vice president, as I explained. And again, the crash of Korea Air 007 was when the representative of the 7th District of Georgia died, Larry McDonald, who led a crusade against the left and communism. Kamala Harris is a 21st century communist. And the truth about the left and leftism is that it is evil, and it is from Satan, and it is anti-life, as is Satan, anti-human, which is why God has aligned it. That all of this points to Larry McDonald and his righteous effort and battle with the left. And Kamala Harris is the epitome of this leftism, and her being the advocate of abortions speaks volumes of this. So that's why she will die in a plane crash exactly 41 years and 4 months after the death of Larry McDonald. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit. But importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.